Yasodanandana Pratyajnanandana Yamunatira Yamunatira Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padram Hamsa Pravichagatachaya Astatar Satai Sivanka Shishi Mad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Tagore Premananda Hari Bo. Oh, that's on the chatter, of course. Let's keep the chatter on. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Before we go into the Srimad Bhagavatam, we read a little bit from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. To get us a bit closer to Srila Prabhupada. Because visitors often ask Prabhupada and his disciples what they thought of various popular spiritual teachers, Prabhupada gave his disciples hints on answering such questions. If the teacher was not a bona fide follower of Vedic scriptures, Prabhupada said the devotee should reply, Swami who? By thus indicating that he had not heard of the particular teacher, he would minimize the teacher's importance. Then the devotee should ask, what is this Swami's philosophy? When the person explained, the devotee could defeat the particular philosophy without attacking the person. India had many Mayavad gurus. Prabhupada explained, and they often travel in groups from one convention to another. Although each had his particular style, primarily they were interested in chapatis. chapatis. And for every chapati, he said, there are many Mayavadis, so there is competition. One of Prabhupada's frequent visitors was Vairagi Baba, an educated man who had visited America and who spoke fluent English. He regularly joined in the kirtan with the devotees, chanting and dancing with them on stage. And when he visited Prabhupada in his room, he behaved with Prabhupada in a familiar way. Too familiar, Prabhupada's disciples thought, but Prabhupada tolerated him. One day, some devotees met Vairagi Baba at a lunch engagement and they noticed he was drinking tea. Almost naively, and yet with an air of challenge, one of the devotees asked why he was drinking tea. Oh, I'm an avadut, Vairagi Baba replied. The devotees who had never heard this word before reported the incident to Prabhupada. Avadut, Prabhupada explained, means one who is beyond the regulative principles. Generally, this refers to Nityananda Prabhu. Prabhupada disapproved of Vairagi Baba's tea drinking and especially of his calling himself Avadut. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Just in time. All right, now we read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 12, text number 9. The chapter is called Rahugana Converses with Jadabharat. Evam niruktam shiti shapta vritam asanitanat paramanavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. Evam niruktam shiti shapta vritam asanidhanat paramanavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. Evam niruktam shiti shapta vritam asannidhanat paramanavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. Evam niruktam shiti shapta vritam asannidhanat paramanavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. Evam niruktam shiti shapta vritam asannidhanat paramanavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. Evam niruktam shiti shapta vritam asanitanat paramanavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. Evam, thus, niruktam, falsely described, shiti shabda, of the word earth, vritam, the existence, asat, not real, nidhanat, from the dissolution, parama anava, atomic particles, ye, all of which, avidyaya, because of less intelligence, manasa, in the mind, kalpitaha, imagined, te, they, yesham, of which, excuse me, samuhina, by the aggregate, ritaha, made, visheshaha, the particulars. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One may say that varieties arise from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. The Earth was originally created by a combination of atomic particles, but these particles are impermanent. Actually, the atom is not the cause of the universe, although some philosophers think so. It is not a fact that the varieties found in this material world simply result from atomic juxtaposition or combination. Purport. Those who follow the atomic theory think that the protons and electrons of atoms combine in such a way as to bring all material existence into being. However, the scientists fail to discover the cause of atomic existence itself. Under these circumstances, we cannot accept that the atom is the cause of the universe. Such theories are advanced by unintelligent people. According to real intelligence, the real cause of the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Lord. Janmatyasya yata. He is the original cause of all creation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham savasya prabhavo matta savam pravartate. Krishna is the original cause. Savakarana karanam. He's the cause of all causes. Krishna is the cause of atoms, the material energy. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kammano buddhya eva cha ahankara itiyam me bina prakriti ashtada. Bhagavad Gita 7.4. The ultimate cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and only those in ignorance try to find out other causes by posing different theories. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjala Chalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. One may say that varieties arise from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. The Earth was originally created by a combination of atomic particles, but these particles are impermanent. Although the atom is not the cause of the universe, now, actually, the atom is not the cause of the universe, although some philosophers think so. It is not a fact that the varieties found in this material world simply result from atomic juxtaposition or combination. One of those verses where you have to prepare, and unfortunately, after last weekend, I needed rest, and on top of that, I also got sick. So, so the preparation didn't quite work out as hoped. So let's get the microphone. So we're in a nice. It's a very the whole section of the Bhagavatam with Bharat Maharaj and then turning into a deer and now Jada Bharat is a very instructive. There's so many wonderful lessons in here. And so we could follow now the conversation between King Rahugana, who realized that Jada Bharat is a great person. And he got already some instructions from Jada Bharat, but he is inquiring more because it was a little bit too complicated for him. For his understanding. He needed a bit more purport from Jada Bharat. So now Jada Bharat is speaking again. And after the inquiry from King Rahugana, well, first of all, Jada Bharat started chastising him quite severely because he was still proud and arrogant a little bit. So it's quite an interesting chapter. So now we hear about basically how the world, what the creation is, how the universe comes together, right? And like the verse speaks about those theories, the atomic theory. In the previous verses, we heard about the living entities, that they're just a combination of different combinations of earth, different combinations of dirt, basically, and just different, and differently transformed. And then one combination of earth is a king, the other combination of earth is a servant, and so on. But ultimately, it's all earth, and it's temporary, as we hear here. Now, there's so many theories, right? And it's just naturally, as a living entity, we want to understand our surroundings. Let's start here, right? And so we have to somehow or other find a way how to acquire this knowledge, right? And that the different ways of doing so. But generally, we are dependent on authority because we are very limited with our facilities to acquire knowledge. Our senses are imperfect, we're committing mistakes, we're illusioned, and we also try to cheat. Even if we don't know anything, we still try to pretend that we know something, so that we have this cheating propensity. And with those four defects, we actually cannot acquire perfect knowledge. We can maybe get some knowledge, some understanding, but not the full understanding. So if we try to understand the universe, the whole material existence, or the sum total of everything, we run into troubles because first of all we are situated within the universe. So we cannot possibly look outside that universe. We learn from the Bhagavatam that there are so many layers of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and intelligence, mind, intelligence, and false ego, and each layer is 10 times bigger as the other one. So we cannot possibly look outside the universe. That's the first limitation, that, well, we are only limited with to see what's within the universe. On top of that, we hear in the Bhagavatam that there are so many more universes. With one breath of Mahavishnu, so many universes are created. With an exhale and an inhale, they disappear again within the body of the Supreme Lord. So there's no possibility to see the other universes. Right? So that's already a very limitation of our small self. And on top of that, we probably don't even have enough time to, we can't even look beyond our own solar system. that's on the big scale, you know. The scientists still looking for this planet 9 because they see something which only can be explained by the existence of another big gravitational body somewhere in the outskirts of our solar system, but it's elusive. They can't find it. Yeah? Because Pluto is not a planet anymore, he's a dwarf planet. So there must be another big planet because there are some anomalies and they can't see it. So how, yeah, and we have so many amazing telescopes and so on. But again, you know, our senses are limited. Our sense perceptions are limited. We can't even look beyond. We can't even find what we're looking for within our solar system. So that's into the big and into the small. Yes. Darwin was finding the cell, but he couldn't really look deep into the cell. So he thought the cell is a very simple organism. And based on that understanding that the cell must be very simple, he formulated his evolutionary theory. But now we can look into the cell even more elaborately and detailed, and scientists realize, wow, the cell is actually a very complex organism, and just looking at the complexity of the cell and how it works and how many different how is it? How many different interdependencies are in one cell. Yeah? The theory of illusion is already disproved, basically, just in that sense. Right? So the cell is something we can perceive just with a magnifying glass if we need to, or with a microscope. You know, it becomes much more difficult to go even smaller with normal faculties. You know, to see the atom, we need. You know, that's very elusive already. We can prove. Scientists can prove protons, electrons, neutrons, and so on. Right. But how do they behave, how they really behave, where they're located, they already don't know. There are areas which they are likely to be within an atom, and that's about it. So it's very difficult. And what to speak of the more modern um, theories, you know, the string theories, quantum theories, somehow explaining the desire to know, explaining what the universe is. It's a desire, yeah, because we are actually full of knowledge. Unfortunately, we are covered by ignorance in our, you know. But so we try to uncover that ignorance by using our limited senses, our very easily illusioned mind, to acquire this knowledge. But this is not the process. Srila Prabhupada writes, or he gives actually a lecture which becomes the introduction to the Sri Ishopanishad. And he said we can just, Vedic knowledge is perfect knowledge. We can just accept it. But we're too proud ultimately to accept Vedic. So, but the conclusion is that, well, if we actually able to analyze the world, the universe, the material existence, you know, would take a lot of time, but if we fully go through with a proper scientific process, we would come to the same conclusion like the Veda. So just taking the Veda, the authority of the Vedas, and accepting that authority, we save ourselves a lot of time. And on top of that, we're not in danger to be led astray by our imperfect senses, by our imperfect mind, by our propensity to cheat, because we find that very often in scientific circles or also in philosophical circles that this propensity to cheat is is there, simply because of pride, of the existence of the false ego. We want to know, we believe we know something, and if we get proven wrong, we still try to maintain the illusion towards ourselves and others that we still know. So the false ego drives us into that cheating propensity, because we want to appear very learned, very knowledgeable, and so on. So we find that. So, and at best, even if we analyze everything within the universe, we would still only know how the universe works, rather than where it's coming from, because we cannot look at the outside. So the knowledge we can get from minutely analyzing that material world from our little viewpoint, like what comes to mind is the frog philosopher in the well. He can't look beyond the boundaries of the well, so we can't look beyond the boundaries of the universe. So whatever we speculate of the whole material existence beyond the universe is simply speculation, can never be verified. So we just need to accept Vedic authority. Now, I'm always wondering when I read so much about creation and argumentation of, oh yeah, the world is like this or the world is like that, and what is the application for a devotee? Why do we need to understand those things, or how much of those aspects of the creation and so on do we need to understand? And for myself, I try to keep my devotional life very simple and straightforward. And so the topic of creation, and so it's not of such importance. Well, what's the purpose? Yeah? The purpose for a devotee is to understand, oh well, Krishna is great, I am tiny, insignificant, so let's just serve him. That's the whole purpose of Krishna's preaching in Bhagavad Gita, of the sages preaching in the Bhagavatam, is for us to accept Krishna as the supreme person and to serve. Right? Because if as long as we think we're so great, we not want to serve. And once we serve, then we get real knowledge. Because real knowledge comes as a realization from Krishna, and real knowledge comes from the descending process. We cannot look up with a torch and, where's the sun? Where's the sun? The sun has to reveal itself or himself to us. Otherwise, we cannot see the sun with a little torch shining up in the night sky. No, we have to wait till the sun rises and reveals itself to us. Right? So there's so much knowledge, so many scriptures, and we can easily get distracted by thinking, well, if I study everything, if I fill my brain with all that information of the scriptures, then I have knowledge. But no, all the scriptures are meant to bring us to the point of surrender to Krishna. That's what he explains in Bhagavad Gita. That's the last instruction. Just surrender unto me. And once that surrendering process happens and we develop a relationship, and especially in this age of Kali, it's through chanting the holy name, that's the Yuga Dharma. Right? And service, because in any relationship, through service, that tightens the relationship, that deepens the relationship, and then Krishna will reveal. Then all that all that knowledge we gain beforehand is information to bring us to the point of surrender and deepening our relationship to Krishna, serving the Lord, and then in the process of service, then revelation takes place and we gain real knowledge. No, knowledge comes from Krishna, no? Transferred, dependent on our surrender. The more we surrender, the more we will learn about Krishna. The closer we are to Krishna, the more he will reveal himself to us. That's the real process of acquiring knowledge, and that happens through chanting, through service. Service means selfless service. No desire for anything in return, and that's not a cheap thing, because we have so many we have so many little desires, we have so many hidden agendas in our hearts, that selfless service is not a very, very, very cheap thing, and Prahlad Maharaj mentions, he gives a nice definition between what is service and what is not service. As long as we want any little thing in return, we're actually not serving. We're not a servant. We are a merchant. We're making a business deal. And through making a business deal with the Lord, well, we cannot expect that he will reveal himself so much to us. Right? Even if we expect to be happy in service, we want to be happy when I'm chanting. I want to be happy when I'm doing service. Well, that's an expectation. We want something in return. We want to feel happy. Even that is not actually part of devotional service. It is true, though, that once we're fully engaged in service without expectations, we will be the most happy. But expecting happiness in return for service is an ulterior motive. So it's very subtle, and but that's the proper way of acquiring knowledge, is selflessly serving the Lord. And all the other ways of studying the scripture, hearing, and so on. The whole purpose of that is to bring us to that point of service. Yeah. Because anything beyond Krishna just comes to mind. Where just can't remember where that verse is, or it must be in Bhagavad Gita somewhere. Anything beyond understanding Krishna and the world in relation to Krishna is ignorance. So we can endeavor so much in analyzing this world and understanding all the chemical processes and physical processes, but ultimately, because it's not in relation with Krishna, it's ignorance. So it's very hard-earned ignorance. So much endeavor, so much time, and it is involved in understanding something which just deepens our ignorance ultimately. Yeah. So it's a nice sentence at the end of the purport. It's the ultimate cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and only those in ignorance try to find out other causes by posing different theories. What I found is, if people don't want to know, if they're not inquisitive, or basically if they're lacking humility, you can bring forth any argument and try to convince them about the limitations of their essential capabilities and so on. They will still reject your suggestion. And we can find that debate will not establish truth. Debate is like like martial arts is with the body, and debate is the same gymnastic with your mind and intelligence. and debates will not bring about the truth. So to convince people, yes, if we have a good understanding of the philosophy of the creation, and also our, if we can present in a nice way how our senses are limited, how we're committing mistakes and so on. We may be able to convince some people who are, not inimical, who are not too proud and too puffed up, who have some humility and understanding that, yes, I don't know anything, I don't know that much, I know something maybe, but I don't know everything. So you may be able to convince some people like that. But if you have very antagonistic people who are very proud of their knowledge, you won't be able to convince them just through logic and argument. It's just a matter. It's just a matter of fact. Even in the ancient Greek philosophies, the ancient Greek philosophers, Socrates. I like that personality. I was reading before I became a devotee, uh, some of the dialogues of Plato and so on. And Socrates' conclusion was, the only thing he knows is that he doesn't know anything at all, which is a very humble position. And that enabled actually him, and we can see that he actually has some realizations. And I like the understanding that uh, there are two personalities: the philosopher, which is the friend of knowledge, the friend of wisdom, and the sophist. The sophist is more someone using knowledge, playing around with it. So sophists usually like to debate and be right, rather than understanding the truth, understanding the facts. Right? So a philosopher wants to understand facts, whereas a sophist just wants to be right. And so, and so Socrates people didn't like him because he was challenging them, and he was so good. Socrates was so good, people couldn't be right anymore. So they got upset and ultimately, yeah, made a whole trial and killed him. But the point here is that through debate and argument, if the false ego is involved, if there's too much pride, and pride is a quality of the false ego, we will not be able to convince people. And our great Srila Prabhupada didn't necessarily convince people through logic and argument. He engaged them in service. He chanted the Lord's holy name. And he let them, he asked for help. Can you help me with the mission of my spiritual master? And so people came forward and engaged in service, and so they could accept. And where does Srila Prabhupada has this strategy from? From Lord Chaitanya himself. Because also Lord Chaitanya, when he was in, what's the name of the city? Varanasi, with Prakashananda Saraswati. He was just chanting Hare Krishna, and people were thinking, what does sentimentalist this be? Because sannyasis at that time, they were just engaging in philosophical debate. That was the dharma of the sannyasis. They would debate about philosophical truths. Right? So when Lord Chaitanya was invited to Prakashananda Saraswati, the Mayavadi leader, right? He did not enter. He sat down in the area where they leave their shoes, outside in the dirt. And then Prakashananda Saraswati came outside and asked him, why are you sitting there in this filthy place? And he reached out to him, giving him a hand to get up and inviting him in. And through that service, again, service, through that service, his heart softened. And in that way, he was open to receive actually knowledge from Lord Chaitanya and could accept it. If he wouldn't have engaged in that service, well, he would probably just debate again on the false ego basis. There would not be any connection there. So that engaging people in service will help them understanding the knowledge, the philosophy, they're becoming receptive for that knowledge. And we find that in preaching often, you know, the people, especially nowadays, anytime I would assume, we really like to talk about what we think about the world, what realizations we have, and you can see, you know, university students are so full of ideas, and you just have to tolerate until they're empty, until they empty their vessel, and you just feed them. You know, oh, can you help us in the kitchen? Yeah, sure, I can help. Blah 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 blah. This and this and this, and they talk and talk so much nonsense. And you feed them prashadam, because you know, especially when it's tasting, and you ask, oh, do you like that? Oh yeah, it's very good. So they're expressing their appreciation for prashadam. So it's also a service. So we engage people in service. We're feeding them prashadam. We're engaging them in kirtan, just so that through that little service they are doing, they're becoming more receptive, and then we can understand Bhagavad Gita. We realize when we're practicing devotional service, when we're doing some yajna for some time, and then looking into Srila Prabhupada's book, suddenly something strikes us. That's revealed through the service. So preaching, preaching ultimately doesn't mean to convince people philosophically. Preaching means somehow or other engaging them in sufficient service that their hearts get softened and they will be able to access that knowledge. Just debate and doesn't really help so much. But if we can present that nicely, that's what we need to. That's what I take out for myself anyway, because I'm not into all the nitty-gritty creation aspects. It's just Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple. That's sufficient for me. If you want it complicated, feel free. It's all there. But for myself, what I take out of this is, all right, I'm tiny, insignificant. Krishna's great. Oh, I better surrender. I better serve. And then I can connect. And in that way, you know, if I can present a little few things about our limitations of acquiring knowledge, that's sufficient for me. I don't need to go into all that nitty-gritty myself, you know. But so that's the main point for me, that all this knowledge, all this information should only bring us to the point of surrender somehow or other to Krishna. And then the real process of acquiring knowledge begins through service. And then we realize that whatever we know, it's solely dependent on what Krishna wants us to know. And he lets us know what we need to know, hopefully in time. And if we trust that, then we don't have to come up with all our own theories and philosophies, but simply trust that in the process of devotional service, with the guidance of the spiritual master, with the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, with the guidance of the scriptures, the bona fide scriptures, we will be at the best and safest possible spot. So, Hare Krishna. I end here. Thanks so much for your attention. Are there any comments, questions, challenges, anything? Prabhu. Hmm. Yeah. And I think the more simple we can approach, simply we can approach it, the easier it is, because it's actually very simple. But we're too complicated, isn't it? Yeah. Take the school up. ISKCON bullets. But Prabhupada, what about this? This? Ah, here's the medicine. Yeah. Or, that example, I like that, which really struck, where this homeless person came into the 26th Second Avenue and brought his toilet paper, and it was just the normal thing for Prabhupada. Oh yeah, make the comment. Everyone, all the hippies were still, wow, what's happening here? So yeah, just this little aspect of service, that whatever melts the heart, that's melting the heart. If we have a hard heart, we cannot understand, we cannot approach, right? And I noticed that for myself. My heart is like super crusty and hard, It's I can feel there's something soft inside, but now I'm not getting there yet. So there's so much more to chisel away. And the only way to do that is coming to that point of serving, not merchant, not wanting anything in return. Anything else, come, Prabhu? Hmm. Yeah. 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 And we access that grace through our service and surrender. Yeah, it's quite amazing. Mm. Mm. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go, Prabhupada. All rigged up here.